The first time I saw a human cry, I thought his cooling system was malfunctioning. Look, I'm Valthera. Yeah, that Valthera, the one who runs the gossip channels across 3 sectors. And I've seen a lot of weird things in my 50 cycles working intel for the Galactic Coalition. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened on that backwater medical station orbiting the 4th moon of Kessler Prime. It started with a distress beacon, the kind that screams desperation across subspace frequencies, the kind that makes every ship in range wince because you know someone's having the absolute worst day of their existence. Most vessels would have ignored it. Too much paperwork, too many liability waivers. But humans? Oh no. Humans have this bizarre compulsion to run toward danger like it's offering free nutrient paste. The medical frigate was called the Nightingale, piloted by a human named Takeshi Okonko, and staffed by a skeleton crew of 4. 4! Can you imagine? Most coalition medical ships require a minimum of 20 just to handle the bureaucracy, but humans streamline everything. They're efficient in the strangest, most reckless ways. Takeshi received the beacon at 0300 standard, which meant he was probably drinking that toxic brown liquid they call coffee. The stuff that smells like burnt failure and tastes worse. He routed the signal through his nav computer, frowned at the coordinates. Because of course they were in disputed territory, where 3 different factions were currently shooting at each other, and immediately changed course. His crew didn't even question it. Sergeant Maya Oladele, the security officer, just started checking weapons. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura began prepping the medical bay. Engineer Fatima al-Rashid started calculating jump sequences, and the communications specialist, a cheerful maniac named Kofi Mensah, started broadcasting their medical neutrality on every known frequency, hoping someone would care about ancient conventions like not shooting at doctors. Spoiler alert, nobody cared. They jumped into the system and immediately got lit up by plasma fire from a Krovan destroyer that apparently missed the memo about medical neutrality. Takeshi, to his credit, didn't even flinch. He just calmly rerouted power to shields and dove straight toward the planet's atmosphere, using the gravity well to slingshot around debris from what looked like a recent battle. The source of the distress beacon was a damaged escape pod, tumbling end over end through the debris field, leaking atmosphere and radiation signatures that would have killed most species in minutes. Takeshi matched velocity, which is insane pilot work by the way, the kind of flying that makes other species vomit, and Fatima used the cargo tractor beam to snag the pod before it could spiral into the planet's upper atmosphere and become a very expensive firework. They hauled it into the cargo bay, and that's when things got complicated. The pod was coalition military grade, the kind reserved for high-ranking officers, with encryption protocols that would take most hackers weeks to crack. Kofi bypassed them in 4 minutes using some obscure human technique involving percussive maintenance, which apparently means hitting things until they work, and they cracked the seal. Inside was a woman. Now, here's the thing about humanoid species. We all look vaguely similar if you squint, right? 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, various configurations of sensory organs. But this woman, even unconscious, even covered in burns and radiation sickness, and blood from half a dozen species, there was something about her that made the air in that cargo bay feel heavier. She wore the remnants of what might have been ceremonial armor once, now scorched and shattered. No insignia, no rank markers, nothing that would identify her allegiance. Her hair, humans are weird about hair, was burned away on one side, and her skin showed the mottled purple-black of severe radiation exposure. Dr. Hiroshi took one look at her readings and swore in 3 languages, which is never a good sign from a medical professional. Her internal radiation levels were off the charts. Her body temperature was dropping fast. She had compound fractures in both legs, 3 cracked ribs, a collapsed lung, and what appeared to be plasma burns across 40% of her body surface. She should have been dead. She was actively dying. And yet her vital signs kept fluctuating, like her body couldn't decide whether to shut down or keep fighting. Get her to medical, now, Hiroshi snapped, and Maya helped him lift the woman onto a hover stretcher. Takeshi stayed at the helm, navigating them out of the combat zone, while Krovan and Thexian fighters continued their territorial dispute around them. because apparently saving lives takes priority over not getting blown up. In the medical bay, Hiroshi worked like someone possessed. He stabilized her breathing first, then started the radiation treatments, pumping her full of human-developed chelating agents that most coalition physicians swore were too aggressive, too risky. But humans didn't become the galaxy's favorite emergency medics by playing it safe. They became favorites by being willing to try anything, to push every boundary, to look at impossible situations and to challenge accepted. Fatima jury-rigged a nano-repair system from spare parts and hope, because of course the Nightingale didn't have proper coalition medical tech, too expensive, too regulated. What they had was human ingenuity, which is somehow both inferior and superior to everything else in the galaxy at the same time. The woman's body fought them every step of the way. Her immune system, if that's what it was, kept rejecting treatments, attacking the nanobots, burning through sedatives like they were water. Hiroshi had to recalibrate dosages 5 times, cursing steadily under his breath, sweat dripping down his face as he worked for 17 straight hours. Maya stood guard outside, medical weapons ready, because humans are paranoid in the most practical ways. Kofi monitored communication channels, making sure nobody was tracking their passenger, and Takeshi piloted them toward the nearest neutral station, pushing the Nightingale's engines past recommended limits, because human engineering is apparently just suggestions they ignore. 3 days. That's how long it took for the woman to stabilize. 3 days of Hiroshi barely sleeping, of constant monitoring, of adjusting treatments and fighting off complications that should have killed her 12 times over. When her eyes finally opened, Hiroshi was there, exhausted and smelling like recycled air and coffee, checking her vitals with shaking hands. She looked at him with eyes that seemed wrong somehow. Too deep, too knowing, like they'd seen galaxies born and die. Her voice, when she spoke, was rough from disuse and damage. Barely a whisper. "Where?" "Safe," Hiroshi said immediately. The way humans do when they're lying to make someone feel better. "You're on a medical frigate, coalition neutral territory. You're safe." She tried to sit up. He gently pushed her back down. "Don't, you've been through hell. Your body needs time." "My ship, gone. I'm sorry. We found you in an escape pod. Whatever happened." He shook his head. "The entire sector is a combat zone. Multiple factions. We couldn't identify your allegiance, couldn't risk contacting anyone without knowing if they—" He trailed off, because even humans have trouble saying finish killing you to someone they just saved. Something flickered across her face. Pain, loss. Something deeper that made Hiroshi lean closer, concerned. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen unconscious again. Then, finally, "Sarah." Not her real name. Even I could tell that. But Hiroshi just nodded, accepting it, because humans understand that sometimes people need to hide, need to start over, need to be someone else for a while. "Okay, Sarah, I'm Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura. You've suffered severe radiation exposure, multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and enough trauma to kill most species twice over. But you're stable now. You're going to recover." He said it with such certainty, such absolute confidence, like he could will it into existence through sheer human stubbornness. And here's the thing that still makes me laugh. In that dark way you laugh at cosmic jokes. He had no idea who he was talking to. None of them did. They'd pulled a random casualty from a war zone and decided to spend resources, risk their lives, violate about 16 different neutrality agreements, all to save one person they didn't know and would probably never see again. Because that's what humans do. That's their whole insane philosophy. One life matters. Every life matters. Even if it costs them everything. Sarah stayed in their medical bay for 2 weeks while her body healed with shocking speed, faster than any human should have healed, actually, which made Hiroshi deeply suspicious but also too professional to pry. She was quiet, watchful, asking careful questions about where they were going, who knew about her, whether anyone had tried to contact the ship. The crew gave her space, gave her time, treated her with the casual kindness that humans extend to strangers like it costs them nothing. Maya brought her books, actual physical books, Because humans are nostalgic hoarders. Kofi told terrible jokes through the medical bay intercom until she laughed, which made him insufferably proud. Fanima modified the medical bed to be more comfortable, adjusting gravity and temperature without being asked. And Takeshi flew them through 3 different jump points, dodged 2 patrol fleets, and navigated an asteroid field to avoid a coalition checkpoint, all without once asking Sarah who she was or why someone might be looking for her. On the 14th day, they reached the neutral station, a ramshackle collection of habitats and docking ports called Haven's Rest, which was neither restful nor much of a haven, but it was neutral ground where questions weren't asked and records weren't kept. Hiroshi cleared Sarah for discharge with visible reluctance, like he was personally offended that his patient was leaving before achieving his definition of fully healed. He gave her a datapad with follow-up care instructions, medication schedules, and his personal comm frequency in case anything goes wrong, because humans cannot help themselves when it comes to worrying about people. Sarah stood in the cargo bay, wearing borrowed clothes that didn't quite fit, looking at the 4 humans who'd saved her life without knowing they'd saved the galaxy's most wanted fugitive. And, yeah, that's not hyperbole. I checked the databases later. This woman had bounties from 17 different factions, kill orders from 4 governments, and a price on her head that could have bought a small moon. I don't know how to thank you, she said quietly, and there was something in her voice that made even Takeshi, who'd seen everything, pause what he was doing. Hiroshi just smiled that exhausted doctor smile and said, "Get yourself somewhere safe. That's thanks enough." Maya handed her a small plasma pistol, contraband on most stations, but Haven's Rest wasn't most stations. "Just in case," she said. "Universe is a dangerous place." Kofi gave her a hug, because of course he did. Because humans have no concept of personal space when they decide they care about someone. "Stay out of trouble," he said cheerfully, like she'd been rescued from a minor traffic accident instead of a war zone. And Fatima pressed a small device into her hand, a portable shield generator, military grade, worth more than the Nightingale itself. "Modified it for maximum efficiency," she said. "Should keep you safe from most small arms fire and low-yield explosives. Don't ask where I got it." Sarah looked at these 4 ridiculous, reckless, impossibly kind humans, and something in her expression shifted. For just a moment, the careful mask she'd been wearing cracked, and I swear the air in that cargo bay shimmered with something that wasn't quite there. Something old and powerful, and terrifying. Then she smiled, a real smile, not the careful one she'd been using, and said, "You saved my life. I won't forget that." She left, walked down the boarding ramp into Haven's Rest's chaotic marketplace, and disappeared into the crowd like she'd never existed. The Nightingale crew watched her go, already mentally moving on to their next emergency, their next impossible rescue, because that's what they do. They had no idea. None of them knew that 3 hours after Sarah disappeared into the station, every communication channel in 5 sectors simultaneously went dark. Military frequencies, civilian networks, even pirates' encrypted channels, everything. Just silent. Then the fleets came. Not 1 fleet. Not 2. 7 different armadas representing every major power in the Galactic Council, emerged from jump points simultaneously around Haven's Rest. Coalition dreadnoughts, Thexian battlecruisers, Krovan destroyer. Even the notoriously isolationist Velk sent ships. And they never send ships anywhere. The station went into immediate panic, because when that many warships show up at once, you're either about to witness history or become it. Station security activated all defensive systems, which was adorable, considering their shields couldn't have stopped a single volley from any one of those fleets. And then, broadcast on every frequency, in every known language, came the message that made the entire galaxy hold its breath. "We seek an audience with the Sovereign. She was last seen entering this station. We mean no harm to the station or its inhabitants. We seek only to ensure her safety and request her return." The Sovereign. That's when I started investigating. Started pulling records. Started connecting dots that should have remained unconnected. And let me tell you, the story I uncovered made my sensory stalks stand on end. You see, 200 cycles ago, which is ancient history to species like humans who've barely been spacefaring for a century, there was a war. The kind of war that makes current conflicts look like children's disagreements. A war that nearly destroyed the galaxy, that killed trillions, that left entire sectors uninhabitable for generations. It ended not with military victory, but with the Concord, a treaty so complex, so delicately balanced, that it required a single neutral arbiter to maintain it. Someone with no allegiance to any faction, someone powerful enough that every government feared her, but wise enough that every government trusted her. The sovereign. No name, no species identification, no official records. Just a figure who appeared when the galaxy needed her, who arbitrated disputes, who maintained the impossible peace through sheer force of will and power that nobody fully understood. She'd disappeared 3 months ago. Just gone. And without her, the old tensions started bubbling up again. Border disputes. Resource conflicts. The kind of small fires that historically become galactic infernos. Every government had been searching for her frantically, because without the sovereign, the Concord was just paper, and paper burns easily. And 4 humans who knew absolutely nothing about galactic politics or ancient treaties or the delicate balance keeping billions alive, had found her dying in an escape pod and decided to save her anyway. On Haven's Rest, Takeshi was having the worst day of his professional career. His ship was surrounded by enough firepower to sterilize a planet. His crew was trapped on a station in lockdown, and some admiral from the coalition was demanding he explain why his medical frigate had been in a combat zone without proper authorization. "We received a distress beacon," Takeshi said, for the 5th time with the patience of someone explaining basic physics to a particularly slow child. "We're a medical ship. We respond to distress beacons. That's literally our entire job. And the passenger you brought here," the admiral pressed. "What passenger?" Takeshi replied innocently, because humans are also accomplished liars when protecting patients. Before the admiral could threaten him with something creative involving airlocks, every screen on the station blazed to life simultaneously. No hacking, no override codes, just raw power forcing every display to show the same image. Sarah, standing in what looked like one of the station's observation decks, wearing clothes that definitely hadn't come from the Nightingale's spare locker. No, these were ceremonial robes that seemed to be made of starlight and mathematics, the kind of thing you wear when you want everyone to know they should be kneeling. Her hair, fully regrown somehow, which should have taken months, floated around her face like she was underwater, but the physics were all wrong, like gravity had forgotten how to work in her vicinity. And her eyes, those deep knowing eyes, now literally glowed with inner light, with power that made every screen she appeared on flicker and strain. "I am returned," she said, and her voice carried through every speaker simultaneously, resonant and calm and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. "The attack on my ship was a test of the Concord's resilience. I am pleased to report that even in my absence, even in chaos, there are those who choose compassion over convenience, who risk everything for strangers, who prove that the ideals we fight for still exist." She paused, and the faintest smile crossed her face. The real smile, the one she'd given the Nightingale crew. "I was found dying by a human medical crew. They did not know who I was. They did not care. They saw someone in need and they acted, without hesitation, without question, without consideration for their own safety. They treated me not as the sovereign, not as a political tool, but as a person who deserved to live." Every fleet commander in orbit was probably having simultaneous heart attacks, or whatever their species equivalent was. The doctor who healed me asked nothing in return. The crew who protected me expected no reward. They saved me because that is what they do, because humans possess a gift that many older species have forgotten: the ability to see individual worth in a galaxy that thinks in populations and percentages. She raised one hand, and space itself seemed to ripple around the station. The massive fleet presence began moving, not attacking, but repositioning into ceremonial formation, the kind reserved for momentous occasions. "I hereby recognize the human medical vessel Nightingale and its crew as friends of the sovereign, with all rights and protections that title conveys." They are granted safe passage through any territory, access to any station, and immunity from all but the most serious violations of galactic law. More importantly, and here her smile widened, became almost mischievous, I am placing Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura on retainer as my personal physician, because apparently I need someone stubborn enough to tell me when I'm being an idiot about my health. In the docking bay, Hiroshi made a sound like someone had hit him with a stunner. Maya started laughing. Kofi whooped loud enough to echo, and Fatima just muttered, Of course this would happen to us." Takeshi, to his credit, just pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed the sigh of a man whose paperwork just became infinitely more complicated. "The Concord stands," the Sovereign continued, her voice taking on weight and formality. "The peace holds. And I am reminded that sometimes the galaxy's greatest powers are not weapons or treaties, but simple acts of kindness from those who see suffering and choose to end it." She vanished from the screens as abruptly as she'd appeared, and the station erupted into chaos, the good kind, where people realize they're not about to die and celebrate accordingly. The Nightingale crew was immediately swarmed by officials, diplomats and representatives who wanted to shake their hands, offer them commendations, probably name planets after them. Takeshi navigated it all with weary grace, accepting congratulations while mentally calculating how much this was going to interfere with their actual job of, saving lives. Later, much later, after the fleets dispersed and the station returned to normal and the galaxy realized it wasn't ending today, a private message arrived on the Nightingale's secure channel. It was from Sarah, or rather, the Sovereign. The message was simple: "Thank you for seeing the person, not the title. The galaxy needs more of that. And Hiroshi, I'll call when I need a checkup. Try not to lecture me about proper rest schedules." Hiroshi read it and laughed until tears ran down his face, that weird human malfunction I'd first witnessed, and I finally understood what I was seeing, not a cooling system failure. Emotion, joy mixed with exhaustion mixed with the overwhelming absurdity of accidentally saving the most powerful being in the galaxy, and somehow becoming her doctor in the process. Me? I filed the story, of course. Best exclusive of my career. Human medical crew accidentally saves Galactic Sovereign, gets diplomatic immunity and universe's most terrifying patient. But the real story, the one I keep coming back to, is simpler and somehow more profound. 4 humans saw someone dying and decided that person's life was worth saving, worth risking everything for, regardless of who they were or what flag they flew or what politics they represented. And that, more than any weapon or treaty or fleet, is why humans scare the hell out of the rest of us. Not because they're strong or smart or particularly good at war, but because they possess this absolutely insane conviction that every individual life has value, that compassion is strength, that choosing to help someone at personal cost is not weakness, but the highest form of courage. The Sovereign knew what she was doing when she gave them that title and those protections. She was telling the galaxy, watch these humans, learn from them. Remember that power without compassion is tyranny, and peace without empathy is just a pause between wars. Also, somewhere in the galaxy there's a human doctor who now has personal physician to the Sovereign on his resume, and I bet he uses it to get the absolute worst patients to follow medical advice. Look, even the Sovereign listens to me about proper rest schedules, and she can literally reshape space with her thoughts. So maybe you should take these antibiotics. And every time the Nightingale responds to a distress beacon now, which they still do, because saving the galaxy's ruler did absolutely nothing to cure their ridiculous hero complex, they're escorted by the galaxy's most powerful entities who know that attacking that particular medical ship would be inadvisable. But the crew treats it all as just another day. Another emergency. Another life worth saving. Whether it's a Sovereign or a refugee, or a pirate, or anyone else who needs help. Because that's what humans do. They see someone in pain and they stop. They help. They care. Even when it's stupid. Even when it's dangerous, even when they don't know they're literally saving the galaxy, especially then. And somehow, improbably, beautifully, that makes all the difference.